Good evening, good morning. Is someone in the afternoon? Oh, yes, our dear friends in European area. Good afternoon. Welcome back to ACI Course 13. Welcome back, Venerable Gyelse. So hopefully people are still coming. There's a lot fewer of you today than there were on Thursday. I hope I didn't scare people away. So yes, thank you for coming. Thank you for your interest in this topic. So important to our practice of putting the teachings into our hearts and our lives. So let's do some prayers. Setting our motivation as high as we can of why we are here, why we are studying accurate reasoning. Sashi Puki Chukshin Metok Tram Rira Blingshin Yende Gampati Sangye Shingdu Mikde Uwarki Drokun Namdak Shingla Juparsho Idam Guru Ratnam Mandalakam Niryatayami. Sangye Churan Soki Chuknam La Jangchu Pardu Dakni Kyapsu Chi Daki Jinso Kipe Sunam Ki Drola Penchir Sangye Druparsho Sangye Churan Soki Chuknam La Jangchu Pardu Dakni Kyapsuchi Daki Jinso Kipe Sunam Ki Drola Penchir Sangye Druparsho Sangye Churan Soki Chuknam La Jangchu Pardu Dakni Kyapsuchi Daki Jinso Kipe Sunam Ki Drola Pinshir Sangye Druparsho. So how's everyone doing with the reading and homework? Any burning questions before we dive even deeper today? Yay, we have the smartest students ever, Venerable Gyelse. So today we are going to do a subject called Shensel. And this topic isn't studied until you've gone to the winter debates for about 3 years. And then the first class in the winter debates is about 50. Well, they're guys normally. There are some monasteries of nuns who are starting this practice as well. And they're quite good, actually. This is from Geshe Michael's experience. And then by the time you get to the second year, it's dwindled down to about 20 monks. And then by the time you get to the fifth, there's only 5 monks left. And then in the fourth year, there was only 2 of them. Shensel is challenging. The reading that you'll have for this class is quite long, about 50 pages. So again, I caution against reading the entire thing in one sitting, especially. You can go straight to the end of the first part and then read the formal logic section, which we'll get to later on in our class today. And Geshe Michael suggested that we read carefully the last part, which is all about the different debating classes that go on at Saramay Monastery. There are 14 different classes covered over different years and over 22 years, actually. So in 22 years, you finish 14 classes. So it's not like us doing 2 classes a week. So we're going at lightning speed. But the whole structure of education is covered in that essay in your reading for today's class. So let me share the Tibetan. And I just wanted to say about the Tibetan, like me, I'm very jazzed about learning Tibetan. And for me, it's very important to preserve this language that is at risk of dying out, because the treasure trove of the Buddhist teachings exists in this language. And it would be the saddest thing imaginable to me if this language died out and those teachings were lost. So even if you don't share my passion for this language, if you understand why I'm doing this, maybe that can inspire you to plant some seeds to learn Tibetan. And if you do want to learn Tibetan, thank you so much. And I am here to help in whatever way I can. You can consider this document that I put together, which is considerably longer than the one that's in the official ACI materials for this course. You can consider it a sort of resource for the future when you're teaching this course yourself, or when you dive deeper into the material, as we've talked about before, that you could spend years going through all the different logical syllogisms and really spending time with them. So consider it your resource. Like Geshe Michael often says, teachers should be prepared with far more than they'll have to use. It's like when you go into a dollar store, you have $1,000 in your pocket. So it's just helping to be prepared. Plus, it actually helps me. I'm finding in a rejoicing kind of way that it's helping me understand logic a little better, I think, by spending time finding all the Tibetan that Geshe Michael gave when he taught the course. Okay, so here we are. We're studying Shen-Cell. Say Shen-Cell. Shen-Cell. I got to get the chat open, see if anyone is chatting. No, very good. So this is another idea of the Buddhist logic school. So remember, we are in the Sautrantika. We're in the Sutrist school. And many of the details here that we're going to cover are not accepted by the higher Buddhist philosophical schools. And if you've ever been to courses in the mixed nuts on the text I'm translating now, the big question is, when was the Buddha being literal and when was he being figurative? Since there's the appearance that his teachings contradict each other. So the question here is, excuse me, did the Buddha teach these Shensel or not? And we could start that off with a little debate. If you say yes, then I could say, De sangye ki tempa yimpartel. Sorry, got to go down. Yimpartel. Are you telling me that Shensel was taught by the Buddha? Venerable Gyelse says yes. Okay, let's do a little debate then. Sangye Chechen. Seme kebu yimpartel. Are you saying that he's not a person of sema? He's not a person of accurate perception? He's not a person who can't lie? Now, to a tell debate, a debate line that ends in tell, you can only answer de, which means I agree, or jir. Who said that?
Cheer.
Okay, thank you, Venerable Kelsey. So he is a person who can't lie? And you would say, right, he is a person who cannot lie.
Yeah.
Okay, then Shensel Chechen. Let's take Shensel, which I haven't told you what it means yet. De sangye ki tem mayim partel. I guess he never taught it?
Cheer. Of course he taught it. Cheer.
Thank you, Venerable Gyelse. So around in this debate, I've led poor Venerable Gyelse around in a circle. But anyway, that was just for fun. The Buddha did teach Shenso. And you'll see from our description of it today in class that it's very important for the study of emptiness. And you'll see as we go through the different kinds of Shensel, how it addresses three common misperceptions about emptiness. So even though we are endeavoring to practice the highest philosophical school of Buddhism, this lower philosophical school of Buddhism is giving us very important tools for our own meditations on emptiness. So it's important for us to understand fine mistakes we might make about emptiness that were taught in the Tibetan schools. There are even some schools that thought Shensel was emptiness, which the consequence branch of the middle way does not agree. Close and no cigar. Okay, so Shen, does anyone remember what this means? We've had it a couple of times. It means other, something else. And sell means to clear it away or eliminate it. So the phrase shensel, Geshe Michael translates as exclusion. And literally what it means is exclusion of what is other. So we're back into the realm of negative things. So put on your seatbelts, and here we go. We've already talked about this in earlier classes when we talked about how it is that the sutra schools say we perceive what we perceive. When we perceive something, let's say a cup, we first, we only get to cup by eliminating everything that is not cup. So it's this process of eliminating things, of excluding things. So, dra mayimpa le lokpa. So, all which is not sound. It's a little tricky. All which is not sound. That's just another way of saying sound. So we're getting to sound through this process of elimination of everything that is not sound. So there are different types of exclusion. Our first type we'll talk about is called Dunrang Tsen Gishen Sem. Say Dunrang. Oh, I should do that differently. Say Dun, Rang Sen, Gi Shen Sem. Dun here, you may recognize it. It's one of those words that has many different meanings. It can mean meaning. It can mean object. And in this phrase, Geshe Michael translates dun as objectification. So we're talking about creating an object. We're going through the process of creating an object by rejecting all that it is not. So that whole process, instead of saying all that, we say objectification. So it's just creating an object by rejecting everything that is not that object. So looking at a cup from the point of view of objectification, from the point of view of that the cup is all that is not the cup, and then looking at this from the point of view of oh, that's a cup, are two different ways of looking at cup, right? One is a process of going through elimination of things that are not it. And then the other one is a positive statement. This is a cup. This is important because some Buddhist schools have claimed falsely that the emptiness of the cup is the fact that it is empty of all that it is not. And if that was what it means to see emptiness directly, we would have been out of the circle of suffering a long, long time ago. I mean, from the Sutra school point of view, that's how we identify anything, is by eliminating all that it is not. So the higher schools say, no, it doesn't get you liberated to see all that is not something. That doesn't stop your mental afflictions, your negative emotions. Now, Rongsen means a specific instance of something. So we could say, this cup is a specific instance of, when I say, for example, think about a cup. When I say think about a cup, you're creating a mental image of a cup, right? When I hold this up, you're having a direct, through Zoom around the world, perception of this cup. So Rongsen is the specific instance of something, and it's opposed to Jitsen, which is the concept or the idea of a thing, the general concept of a thing. So again, there are two ways of looking at something. One is negative, one is positive. Okay, so excuse me. When we talk about Dun Rongsen, how many are there? Well, according to the Sutrist school, only functioning things, only things that do something have a Dun Rongsen. So, for example, space, empty space, could never have Dun Rongsen, could never have objectification. So why are we getting so complicated? We'll see when we dive more deeply into the middle way presentation of how the world is, that we'll see that the lower schools have a problem with functioning things in the way that they think about them. All the philosophical schools from the lower half of the middle way, the Svatantrika, or the independent group of the middle way, all on down to the detailist school, they can't understand how a thing that does something could be empty of self-existence. They think it has to have something substantial about it, something, some identity that is inherent to it. And they all think different things, but in general, that's what their problem is, according to the consequence branch of the middle way school. So they think, oh, you know, if a car didn't have some sort of carness about it, how on earth could I get in a car and go to the store? How on earth could I get in a car and go visit Venerable Gyelse? You know, not possible. So that's a little problem. And so the Buddha said, I think I better teach Shenso. I have to teach that things that do things don't exist from their own side. So the classic example, when you get to Ranggyupa, which is just the Tibetan word for the independent branch of the middle way, I got to see it this morning. The classic example is the rising of the sun itself. And you could say, well, I can understand how this thing is some sort of projection from the ripening of my karma. But the rising of the sun, like, come on, 7 billion people watch the sunrise. Well, they could watch the sunrise, but they all agree that the sun rose. How could that be a projection of my mind? But that's what the consequence branch of the middle way says, that these 7 billion people have each collected the karma to see the same thing. And then when that karma runs out, you'll be called blind, or you'll be called dead, or you'll be called in a cave, or in an office all day without any windows. The karma wears off. There are lots of people who can't see the sun. And we have the karma for it to shift, like about every 12 hours. The sun shows up for 12 hours and then it disappears for 12 hours. And that's not because our planet is spinning and rotating around the sun. It's because our karma to see the sun wears out. And then we have another karma that ripens to see the sun 12 hours later. And it's really lovely. The people that I can see, none of them are laughing, which is good, because if we were laughing at this, it means we don't quite understand how things function. So, bravo. The only reason the sun rises is because you've created the karma to see the sunrise. It will wear out. You may not want it to wear out, but it will, because it's a projection. It doesn't do anything from its own side. So, Dun Rang Sengi Shen Cell. Each functioning object, each thing that does something, has its own nature of being the opposite of all that it is not. So if someone asked you, which you know is a clue for you'll be asked this on your homework, if someone were to ask you for an example, we need to get used to this phrase. Mayimpa le lokpa. Say Mayimpa le lokpa. Mayimpa le loka. It can be like a little mantra when we're studying the Sutra school. When we study Ben's text or Adam's text. Mayimpa le lokpa. Lokpa, we can think of it as like flipping a pancake. We're reversing it. Lokta means a wrong view. And this is like a reversal. And Mayimpa le lokpa means the opposite of all that it's not. This lay here, normally, like, I don't know, 95% of the time or something, this means karma. But here it's functioning as a I can't remember the name. I haven't had enough of this. but here it means than, THAN. It's comparing things. The second kind of Shen cell we're going to talk about is called Loi Shen cell. This one would be really difficult to say 5 times fast. To say Loi Shen cell. Loi Shen cell. Lo, does anyone know lo? Another common word. Yay, thank you, very good. People know lo. It means mind. In general, mind. So a loi shen cell means a mental exclusion, a mental type of exclusion. And this just means that in the sutra school, when you conceptualize something, when you have an idea about something, you mentally make an image, a mental image of the opposite of all that it is not. So the first one that we talked about was about a thing that does something. This one, Loi Shen cell, is about a mental image that is the opposite of all that it is not. So this is very close to a dunchi that Venerable Gyelse talked about, oh, so many days ago, which is getting close to what is at the root of dependent origination. Because in the highest school, you're mistaking a mental image for the actual object. When we have this perception of these colors and shapes, we project, humans do who are familiar with this thing, project cup. And we confuse that projection cup with the thing itself. Of course, with the dog, well, they're not going to do much with this other than maybe, hey, let's play ball. Will you throw that thing and I'll go catch it? So it's Loi Shen cell is like an intermediate step on the way to the highest philosophical school's understanding. So it's just the image which appears to a conceptualization that is the opposite of all that it is not. So we could do if we wanted to, but I'll just talk through it. There's something called a rirong rachuchen. Has anyone heard of a rirong? Riwong, excuse me. It means rabbit in Tibetan, riwong. And then we talk about the raw of rabbits, the horns of a rabbit. Riwongra. So we can talk about all the rabbit's horns that we've seen in our life. We could talk about all the 2-headed, 15-foot tall purple elephants running behind my head right now. Is there a Shen cell? Is there an exclusion for a non-existent thing? There is a Shen there is a Shen cell about rabbit's horns, because remember the one we're talking about, the type of exclusion we're talking about, which is a mental image. We're getting rid of, we're eliminating the opposite, all that is not. So in order to to say that there's no purple two-headed elephant sitting behind me, a big one, big enough to see, were it there, you have to have a mental image of it. You have to have the conceptualization. That's hard to say. Conceptualization, the concept of a purple, humongous elephant, in order to say, oh, it's not there. So that fits within the Loi Shen cell. The classic Shen cell is the first one we were talking about. So from the Sutrist school point of view, the only real Shen cell, the only real exclusion is about something that does something. They talk about the Shen cell of a mental image, a Loi Shen cell, a mental exclusion. But those are just imaginary. And for them, just imaginary is I wouldn't say it's not something we're talking about, but the real one is the exclusion for things, because the only way you can get to this thing is by eliminating all that is not it. You'll see anything that is denme, which if you took my mixed nuts class last Saturday, that was a vocabulary word. That means doesn't have a self nature. Doesn't exist in truth, literally. They have a sen shell. They have a Loi sen shell. They have a mental exclusion. Okay. So in this school, they don't use the word tongpani, which is the word that the higher philosophical school uses for emptiness. They use words like takme and denme, selflessness, no true nature. It's not that they don't agree with the word emptiness, it's just that they don't use it. So when you are working with texts that are from the lower schools, you'll see words like, no true nature and selflessness and lack of true existence, and not so much emptiness. What about the nature of a mental exception? So from this school's point of view, it has no true nature. It's a fantasy. Things that are conceptual are don't have a true nature. Things that do things do have a true nature. The higher school agrees with the sutras that mental things, conceptions, don't have a true nature, but they also say, this doesn't either. Nothing does. So if we talk about this humongous purple elephant with two heads, we can say, well, does it lack true existence? And then you say, well, yeah, it lacks true existence. But then the response would be, so it must exist then, right? You're like, why do you say that? Who said that? Because it has emptiness. It has a lack of true existence. It must exist, so it must have its own emptiness. So then, actually the Tibetan for that would be, I put it down here somewhere, but it's Denme Yimpe cheer. So to a cheer, to a debate statement that ends in, well, because there's only two ways you can respond, right? Tak madru, I don't agree with your reason, or Chapa Majung, which would be something like, well, I agree it has its own emptiness, but that doesn't mean that it exists. So you would go with Chapa Majung. But in this school, well, and in this school, it doesn't matter whether something exists or not. Whether this applies to a two-headed purple elephant and a cup. The quality of not being self-existent covers going beyond existence itself. So it covers things that don't exist. So that's Loi Shensel. The first kind we talked about, Dun Rang Senki Shensel, the objectification exclusion, that applies only to working things, things that do something. And Loi Shensel, or mental exclusion, applies to conceptual things. Okay. Now, the last one, the third of the three types, is called Meigaki Shensel. Say Meigaki Shensel. And Meigak, we've talked about before, right? Does anyone remember? It's a gakpa. Do you remember gakpa? We had the definition, what seems like eons ago, but was really just last week. And a gakpa is a negative thing which must be perceived by the state of mind which perceives it directly through a process of eliminating directly that which it denies. It's a negation. It's an exclusion. Whether you call it a negation or an exclusion, it's the same thing. So a megak is a negative in the sense of being an absence of something, as opposed to a negative in the sense of not being something. So megak would be the absence of a cup in the visual screen that you're looking at right now. A mayingak would be the bird I'm holding in my hand. This is not a bird. It is not a bird. So that's the two different kinds of megak and mayingak. Can be a little confusing, but we just think about it. It's confusing, especially for English speakers, because we use the same word for existing, something existing or not, and whether something is something or not. See, I can't even talk about it without using the word. English is, I don't know, a defective language. Anyway, I should remember that when I'm editing, then I won't get so upset when when English is not used properly. Okay, so there are two kinds of classic absences, and they are ultimate reality and plain old reality. So emptiness or selflessness is a megak. It's the simple absence of something which never could have been anyway. Like the purple two-headed gigantic elephant. The simple absence of that something that could not exist, did not exist, does not exist, never could exist. A pen that could function from its own side. The person at work, or the person driving the other car that cuts you off in traffic, existing from their own side. Oh, they're just being mindless. No, that's not where they come from. That's the simple absence. So any negative thing that ever happens to us, whether it's a pen running out of ink, or someone cutting us off in traffic, if it existed from its side and had nothing to do with me, it would be a self-existent thing. And the absence of that is what we call emptiness, selflessness, which implies that it's me who has to take responsibility for creating a world in which no negative things happen. So I'm going to give some examples of those three types of exclusions, because some homework may ask you for them. So an example, did I confuse these? I probably did. Oh, there it is. Sorry, I'm just confusing myself. An example of the objectification exclusion, if you can come up with a short, sexy phrase for this, I will be most appreciative. Objectification exclusion. An example would be Bumpa Mayimpa Le Lokpa. The opposite of everything that is not a water pitcher. For number 2, which was the Loi Shensel, the mental exclusion, the example is Tokpe Nang Yul Dukyurpa. Say Tokpe Nang Yul. So Tokpa, we talked about this last time. Tokpa, in this school, especially when we're talking about logic, it's the process of conceptualization. Working to perceive something through some kind of mental picture, as opposed to seeing something directly. When you see blue, you're not having a tokpa. It's not through a concept. When you're perceiving blue, you're perceiving it directly. If there's no blue around, when you think about blue, you are using a tokpa. You are using a mental concept. You're using a jepak sema. You're having an accurate perception through deduction. Nangyo is the image that the object that appears in your mind, the image of an object, a mental image. So when we were talking about rabbit's horns and purple two-headed elephants, does the Nangyul, the mental image, exist? Yes, very good. The mental image exists, but does the thing exist? No. Great. We're all on the same point. Then when I say, look at my cool pen. Is there a cool pen behind my back? You don't know for certain, but you can use logic. You see my arm is kind of twisted behind my back. And I was holding it in that hand. So probably, I can reason that probably I didn't hear anything fall. Probably there's a pen, a cool pen behind my back. So that's Tokpa. A logical perception of a pen. And then Dugyurpa just means to become. So altogether, it's an image of something, whether it exists or not, that appears to a conceptualization. That is the example for a Loi Shensel, for a mental exclusion. Whew. Are we still happy? Yay, we're well on the road to seeing emptiness directly. Whenever it gets rocky, remember that. Okay, an example for the third type of mental exclusion is Bumpa Mayimpe Tongpa. Bumpa, oops, it's down here. Bumpa is our favorite water pitcher. Mayimpa means is not, right? And Tongpa means empty. So the example is, for a negative exclusion, is that a water pitcher has nothing about it which belongs to what is not a water pitcher. So this is the Shen cell, the exclusion of an object, which is the simple absence of something. It's a megak, the simple absence of something. And that's the general fact that everything is devoid of anything from that group of things which it is not. It lacks anything about it that belongs to what it is not. So if we think about the absence of this cup having anything to do with the color blue. As an example of just one of the things that is absent, that is lacking about this cup. There are many other things, right? Penness, purpleness, like everything that is not this cup. Okay? I hope that clarifies and not confuses. We're not saying anything about how it exists, whether it's self-existent or not. It's just this pen lacks, or this cup lacks anything that doesn't belong to it. It lacks my head. It lacks my car. It lacks the blue sky. It lacks the sun. And that's what emptiness is as well. And that's why this third one, this third type of exclusion, is so important for us in our path to see the nature of reality directly. He said, look, what's real emptiness? Look around where you are and try to find something that's self-existent. Look, you check each thing that you see. Is that self-existent? Is that self-existent? Oh, I have a water pitcher. Is my water pitcher self-existent? And when you don't find something, it's your mind is, it was just like drawing a blank. There's nothing there for your mind to engage with. Okay, now we have this fun exercise in this course. We're moving on from exclusions, yay, to formal logic. And we're going to go through different parts of a logical statement. And we've talked about some of them already, but we're going to talk about many more parts. Today is a list of parts. And you might want to take notes about this, because there is most definitely a question about different parts of this particular logical statement that we're going to talk about. And you'll have to say not only what the part is, the name of the part, but what part of the logical statement is an example of that part of a logical statement. Does that make sense? I'm just hoping it does. Okay, so let's go to our favorite logical statement. Let's talk about sound. Dra chi chen. Mitate. It is a changing thing. Mitakpa. Chekbe. Because it's a made thing. Oh, we've got a new line now in our logical statement. Perna bumpashin. For example, it's like a water pitcher. So that's our classical statement that we're going to use to talk about all the different parts of a logical statement. And this, another word for the logical statement in Tibetan is jorwa. Say jorwa. And that means a bringing together, literally. A form of it is used in the word Nelnjor, which you may be familiar with. It's a yogic practitioner. But another meaning for jorwa is when we're talking logic, we're talking about a logical statement. So we are going to talk about like, okay, what's the subject? What's the reason? What are we trying to prove? Things like that. There are 14 different parts that we're going to talk about. Yay! Take sound. It's a changing thing because it's made. It is, for example, like a water pitcher. Why do we give a water pitcher? Can anyone have a guess? Why do we use an example? Why would we add an example? Remember, when we're doing a jorwa, when we're presenting a logical statement, we are presenting things about which our opponent, which it would be nice if we had another word for that, our debate partner, they're not really opposing us. We all are trying to get to the same goal. Our debate partner accepts each part and they haven't tied it together, right? That's the only reason we debate with someone, is to help them make that connection between the reason we give them and the quality that we're trying to prove. And an example is an aid, is a tool that ties it all together. The example is something that can apply to both the reason and the quality we're trying to prove about something else. Okay, first one is easy. In our logical statement, what's the subject? When we say dra chuchen, take sound. It's a changing thing because it's made. What is our subject? Sound, yes. Great, thank you. So our clue here is chuchen. Chuchen means subject. The second is what's called the drupja. Say drupja. It's the assertion. It's what we're trying to prove about the subject, sound. And our assertion in this jorwa is that sound is mitakpa. It's changing. That sound is a changing thing. So if someone were to ask you on your homework, what is an illustration of the assertion, you would say dra mitakpa, or sound is changing. So Geshe Michael was very kind in pulling these examples out and making them into a list because, well, you'll see in the reading that it's all narrative. It's all discussion. So here we have a nice list. It's very compartmentalized, related to particular parts of the logical statements so that we can more easily understand what's going on. Because as we know, if we don't have a common understanding of something, it's very difficult to converse even, much less debate with someone about the nature of reality. Okay. Now we have a third part of a syllogism, and that's called the drupje che. Say drupje che. Now you may be wondering, well, what's the difference? Oh, drupje che, I should just say, is the quality to be proven. The quality to be proven. And the quality in our logical statement that we're trying to prove is changing thing. Changing thing. So the drupja, the second one, our assertion is that sound is a changing thing. The quality we're trying to prove is changing thing. So it's just changing thing, independent of sound is a changing thing. So it's making a distinction between our assertion and the quality we're trying to prove. There can be two forms of the quality we're trying to prove. And don't worry, they're not like A and B of number 3. They have their own number. So we are quickly going down the list of 14 things. Okay. There is an explicit form of the quality to be proven and an implicit form. So we make a distinction between these two things. So our fourth part of a syllogism is an ng ki drupje che. And if you remember from previous classes, ng, that means directly. Mostly when we talk about it, we talk about direct. And here what we're meaning is explicit. So this is a nuki, explicit form of the drupje che, the quality to be proven. the quality to be proven as it's directly stated. And what would that be? We just had it. That's the subject, Natasha. Mike, that's the drupja, not the drupje chu. Natasha, you got it. Changing thing. Changing thing. So the drupja, what is it? The second one is the assertion we're making that sound is a changing thing. We assert that. If we get more specific about that second line in our logical statement, we're just talking about changing. We're not talking about sound is changing. We're not relating it to the subject. Just the quality independent of the subject, changing. So the implicit, what we are saying directly about the quality to be proven is exactly what we said was the example of the quality to be proven because we said it. Changing. Mitakpa. Now, the next one, the fifth example or part of a logical statement is the shuki drupjecha. Shuk, say shuk. And shuk means, as you might guess, if we had explicit, then this one is implicit. Thank you. Command of the English language. So what would be an implicit quality to be proven for the quality mitakpa, for changing thing? We talked about this, way back in class 2, I think, or maybe even class 1. When we talked about the synonyms for changing things. Do you remember? We could say a ngupal, a working thing, a made thing, a caused thing, a working thing. Thank you, Mike. We could say, and this is the example that your homework wants you to say, is something that lasts only an instant. Kichikma. And we had that when we talked about changing things, because that is the definition of a changing thing. So, in other words, the definition of a quality to be proven is the implicit form of that quality. So whenever you see a definition and someone asks you, which part of a syllogism is that? You can say, that's the implicit form. The sixth part is a gotcha. Our favorite word in the consequence branch of the middle way school. And it's also favored by the sutra school. What is the thing we are denying, right? Gotcha, the thing we deny. In the consequence branch, it's sort of like we automatically tie that word gotcha with a self-existent thing, because that's what the consequence branch of the middle way is all about. Eliminating our holding tightly to a self-existent thing. Here in the sutra school, more generally, we're just talking about anything we deny. So it doesn't necessarily have to be a self-existent thing. Okay? And so here, our example of something denied by our logical statement, when we say take sound, it's a changing thing because it's made. For example, it's like a water pitcher. What is denied by that statement? That sound is unchanging. Thank you. It's the opposite of our assertion. What we deny is the opposite of what we are asserting. That sound is unchanging. So that's kind of a, what is the word we had? A lokpa. It's a flip. It's the opposite. Okay. Now, for another opposite, that's a big hint. What is the quality that we are denying about sounds? The quality, what is the quality that we're trying to prove about sounds? Sorry to confuse things, Natasha. You gave us the right answer. Unchanging. Takpa. That is the quality that we're denying through our logical statement. And this, its formal name is Geshe. So you see that the assertion, what we deny, the gotcha, and the quality we deny, the only difference is this ch at the end of the phrase. So that can help us make a distinction between them. Now, there's another thing going on, and that is called a tunchok. Tunchok. And confirming or denying an idea is often done by checking all of the similar cases. Similar cases. That's tunchok in Tibetan. So what is a group of similar cases in our logical statement, in our Jorwa? Take sound, it's a changing thing because it's made. It is, for example, like a water pitcher. So what would be the group of similar cases? Mike, you're taking a little logical leap when you say made things, because we're talking about changing things. Our assertion is take sound. It's a changing thing because it's made. So our assertion, that's the thing, that's like the main part of the logical statement. That's what we're trying to prove. Our reason is like tying together the assertion with the subject. Our reason, because it's made, ties together take sound, it's a changing thing. Our assertion that sound is a changing thing. So when we're looking for a group of similar cases, for our syllogism, we'd be looking at all changing things. Mitak beche. We're looking to see, oh, does the reason made things? is it necessarily in that group we call all changing things? And this is a critical aspect of a logical statement. It's so critical, it has its own name. It's called a tushi. Say tushi. And that means a pivot. The whole argument pivots on this. The whole argument is dependent on this, that we can find a made thing in the group of similar cases of all changing things. Does it fit? Do you have to go through and check every single example, every single member in that group of similar cases? No. You just do a logical check, because if we had to go and check every one, it would take us an eternity. You know, we can't do that. The whole group of similar cases is called a tunchok. And you can say all those things which are changing in the world. So what we're trying to do, remember, with this logical statement is we're trying to get our debate partner to make that association between the reason that we give them and the assertion that we're making. Take sound, it's a changing thing. I assert it's a changing thing because it's made. That's why. So does a made thing fit inside this group of similar cases to changing things, all changing things? Okay, a little breath break. Breathe in deep, straighten your back, stretch your arms. We still have more to go. Geshe Michael, at this point, when he taught this class, someone came to him and said, I just don't think I can do this. This is too difficult for me. It's just, I'm not that kind of special person who understands. Yes, more coffee. I'm not the kind of person that understands, all these details about logic. I'm not the kind of person who can understand this. I'm just regular old person. Remember what I said at the beginning, that as the monks go through learning logic, they're like dropping like flies. Do you have that phrase in your language? You start off with 30 people and then 4 years later, you've got 2. If you can make it through these classes, forget about whether you can go on the debate ground and like be able to debate Ben Kramer or someone like that. Like, I can't debate Ben Kramer. He's too sharp. Adam, no, they're too sharp. I do the best I can with what I've got. But even just going through these classes, even just being interested in this topic, even just understanding that if I did understand logic, I could see emptiness directly. I could get out of suffering. even just having that wish is an extraordinary virtue. It's almost inconceivable. I mean, 99.9% of the people on this planet, they have no interest in diving deeply into subjects and assertions and qualities and implicit ones and explicit ones and negatives and absences. Oh, no, they'd be like, let's go out for breakfast, okay? Can we get a coffee? But no, you're here. You're interested in this. You are extraordinarily special. So rejoice, if nothing else, before your head hits the pillow tonight. Think, I'm a person who's interested in logic. Yay, I rejoice that I created this karma. May it continue. Okay, that was our little interlude, and we go back into our list. Okay, we've done 8 of the list. So now we're on to 9. So we just covered the similar cases. Tunchok, what do you guess this next part would be? Unsimilar. Yes, very good. Right. We call it dissimilar in English. It's the mitunchok. It's the field of cases that are not like what we're talking about. So take sounds. They're changing things because they exist. Wait, because they exist? What? You said because they exist? That wasn't our syllogism. What are you talking about? So you would say, Kapamajung, not necessarily. Just because something is an existing thing doesn't mean it's changing. So you're looking at the whole field of things that are not like what you're trying to prove. Your assertion that sound is a changing thing. And when I say, oh, because it's an existing thing, you have to take existing thing and put it into a group of things that are dissimilar. So just because something exists doesn't mean it's a changing thing automatically, right? It's dissimilar. It's from a dissimilar group. So then I would say, well, show me something that exists. Like, because, I'm not just going to buy what you say, that just because something is an existing thing, it's not necessarily a changing thing. And I'm going to say, okay, show me. Show me an existing thing that is not a changing thing. And you could say namka. You could say empty space. Because that's something that exists. And it's something that doesn't change. It's an unchanging thing. And although that is an example, that's not what will be a correct answer on your homework. Hold on. The example that Mike gave us many, many minutes ago, before I said anything, is all unchanging things. So our assertion is that sound is a changing thing. So our group of dissimilar things would be all unchanging things. Venerable Kadrin, you asked to share the list for debates from last class. Do you mean the ending of class where we had a debate? Okay, great. We're actually, I will give you that. I will write it out in English as well. I do have the Tibetan for that, as well as for, we're going to continue that if we get through this list of 14 things. We've just finished 9 of them. But yes, you will have my Tibetan list as well. Okay. Excuse me while I become refamiliarized with my notes. Sometimes I make notes and then I go, what? Let's see. But thankfully, we're all friends and we're all here for the same reason. Okay. Just in that little debate that I changed, take sound. It's a changing thing because it exists. Because it exists is not a great reason to use. Because things which do not change things that do not change, not all the things that exist would fit. Either way, because existing things, there are some existing things that change and some existing things that do not change. So the use of similar cases and dissimilar cases can help us when someone tries to use a reason that is in a way too big for what it is they're trying to prove. Like they've gone too far. Take sound, it's a changing thing because it exists. Well, no, it exists is way too big for the thing that we're talking about, which is changing things. But we can say it's not a great reason, but it is a reason, right? Because it exists. Remember when way back, it seems like a million years ago, we had the definition of a reason, and that was taksukupa yimbe chir, because I gave it as a reason. Anything given as a reason is a reason. That's its definition. Does it mean it's a good reason? No. We now have in our pockets the 3 tests for whether a reason is a good reason or not. Tak yang dak, a correct reason, a good reason. And now in our list comes these 3 tests, these 3 relationships in a logical statement. The 3 relationships that must hold if it's a good logical statement. So number 11 on our list. Sorry, if you'll notice that the Tibetan list I give you is much longer than the Tibetan I use in class. I'm like going into the dollar store with $1,000. I'm trying to like, oh, I may use this Tibetan word here, but oh, I didn't. So it's just so that you've also got $1,000 now when you go to teach course 13. Bless your heart. Please do. Okay. Number 10, someone was asking me, what is number 10? Number 10. Oh, how far do I have to go? You have about 350. I don't believe you, Mike. You have a heck of a lot more than $3.50. Oh, you're right. Where is number 10? Let me investigate very quickly, because we cannot go to 11 without having 10. Maybe I forgot to put a heading. Well, the group of dissimilar things, I think, was number 9, wasn't it? Or did I have 2 9s? Yeah, there's one number 9, the Mitun Chok. And the group of similar cases, before that was number 8, the Tunchok. So let me just pull up the answer key and cheat, okay? Okay, here we go. Thank you very much. You all have perfectly told me that the missing thing is the reason. The chepa in our case, well, we call it the talk, right? Talk is reason. Let me see if I have an example of, oops, that's not it. Let me get back to my document. The talk, the reason, is the 10th part of a syllogism. And in our example, maybe because it was so simple, I just blew over it. What is our reason? Take sound because it's a changing thing because it is like a water pitcher, Mike. You're showing off your 350. The reason we give in our logical statement is because it's made. You can look for the cheer. Look for the because. That is our little sign for a talk, for a reason. And in Tibetan, that's chepa. And somewhere in here, I may have a chepa. I will add this to the list. But it's using English to talk about the Roman characters for the transliteration of chepa. It's B, Y, A, space, pa. Is it B-Y-A-S, pa? It is B-Y-A-S, space, pa, chepa. Thank you, Venerable Gyelse. Phew. I'm glad it was just an easy one that I missed and not like, what is the implicit version of the, Ooh, that would have been really challenging. Oh, I did not miss it. I just missed that I didn't miss it. I guess that's what I did. I know I missed something. Okay, so back to the 3 relationships, right? Number 11 on our list. So number 10 is indeed, the reason is because it's a made thing. So our example would be made thing, chepa. We don't have to repeat the because it is part, just chepa, made thing. Okay, so if we're talking about the 3 relationships now, what do you suppose is the next one in our list? Oh, that's a good guess, Wonbu. But we're talking about the relationship, the 3 relationships. And yes, as Natasha says, it's the relationship between the reason and the subject. That there is a relationship between the reason we give, in our case, a made thing, and our subject, which is sound. So let me find myself in my notes again. There we go. So here, the Tibetan word for number 11, which is the expression of the relationship between the subject and the reason, that is chokchu. That's what we call chokchu. And in our syllogism, it is dra chepa, that sound is a made thing. That's our confirmation that that relationship exists. And with studying this, it's going to be a little bit sad sometimes, because like we'll go out to dinner with friends and we're talking about the things going on in the world, and someone will say something and you'll go, oh, there's no relationship between what they said the reason was and the thing they're talking about. There's no chokche. Invalid. But no, you'll have to keep that to yourself. But that's a danger, right? Okay, the next one, the 12th in our list of parts of a logical statement, it's called the Jekya. And do you remember, this is the second test of whether something is a correct logical statement. And that was, if 3, then 2. If, very good. If 3 is true, if the reason is true, then the assertion is true. So Jekya means the expression of the positive necessity between the reason and the quality to be proven. So here's a case where the Tibetan is much easier to remember than that long English sentence, Jekya. And J means after, and Kya means necessity. So it's the relationship, it's the necessary relationship between the reason and the assertion. And in our example, it is chenam mitakpe kya. If, that's what this na is, if something is a made thing, it must be a changing thing. Kya must be. Mitakpa, changing. Na, if, che, made thing. If something's a made thing, it must be a changing thing. So that's the expression of the second test. Rolling right along. We're up to 13. But don't get too happy because we still have something more to do after the 14. Sorry. Okay. Or yay. We should say yay. There's still more. Okay. The third test is the negative necessity. The ndokya. Dokya. If something is not 2, then it's not 3. If something is not the assertion, it cannot be the reason. So in our example, thank you, Natasha. If something is, actually it would go the other way around. If something is not changing, then it can't be made. Because remember, our reason is that because it's made. Our reason is that it's made. So we're going first in the second one, we went, if it's 3, then it must be 2. And now we're saying if it's not 2, it can't be 3. So if it's not changing, it can't be made. And this is the Tibetan for that. Is there anyone who's doing the homeworks in Tibetan? Maybe just write one answer in Tibetan, just to plant the seed. We got to save this language. Okay, it's Hakna Makyape Kya. Mak. We got all these. If it's talk, if it's not changing, Majepe. It's not a made thing necessarily. Okay. Now we're going to jump to, who was it who said this early on? A little what? Wangvu. Now you can say, okay, what's the 14th part? Wangvu? It's the example. And it has a little more technical name. It's the similar example, because we don't want just any example. Take sound, it's a changing thing. Because it's made, it's just like pancakes. No, I wouldn't use that. It's just like Georgia. That's not similar. That doesn't fit. That example doesn't help me. So it has to be a similar example, something that will help our debate partner get to understand and accept our assertion. Okay, so the similar example, the Tibetan word is tunpe, and the example is, thank you, Natasha, bumpa, water pitcher, because it's just like a water pitcher. The same thing is going on for both the water pitcher and sound. Okay, here's the last thing. Maybe. There are, let's just take a breath. Okay, we got through the list. We've identified most of the parts of a syllogism, of a logical statement. Okay, so going back to Tak Yang Dak, we talked before about a correct reason. And we talked about the 3 tests for a correct reason. And we just talked about those 3 tests. So we're right in the right state of mind. But for correct reasons, there are 2 types of them. Phew. 2 types of correct reasons. And this actually goes, as we've done many times already today, it goes back to an earlier class, like probably the very first class. When you can divide correct reasons into two, they can be divided into those that you give yourself and those that you give to others. The practice of these teachings, these Buddhist teachings, is for ourselves. Our practice is our own practice. It's our personal practice. When we sit down to meditate and use logic to get to an understanding of emptiness, we're doing that for ourselves. We're using those reasons for ourselves in our meditation. And then we have reasons when we're trying to help someone else come to a correct understanding of emptiness, right? So the words for these are Rangdung Chap Ki Tak Yang Dak. So for the reason, Rangdun, for me, and Kyap just means, in this situation. So, and we already had Tak Yang Dak. That's correct reason in this situation where I'm doing it for myself. And then there is Shendun Ka Ki Tak Yang Dak. And we had Shen earlier, which means others. Yeah, right. I saw Arena moving her lips to say others. Shendun Ka. So on the occasion of helping others. That kind of correct reason. So in the first class that Venerable Gyelse gave us, in the first reading that we had, one of the most important things for us to do for ourselves is to not judge other people. For all we know, for all I know, everyone on this Zoom call became enlightened 1,000,000 years ago. And it's just me left who's creating positive karma by teaching about logic to help myself see emptiness directly so I can join you in your Buddha paradise. But we don't know just looking, unless you are someone like the Buddha who can see another person's mind, can see the thoughts of another person. So if we have this, if we try and debate that, right, let's consider all the people on our Zoom call. Our assertion can be, they are not tantric deities because, is it possible to give a correct reason? What could we say? Because I don't perceive them as such. That's a good reason. We see that a lot, right? Oh, that teacher's no good because I don't see them as being smart. or that person hasn't seen emptiness directly because I still see them as not telling the truth or swearing when they stub their toe. That can't be someone who's seen emptiness directly because I haven't seen that. Okay, Mike, so how would we prove that? We can't, right? We can't prove what someone else perceives. In a sense, I can't even prove to you what I perceive because we're all dealing with our projections. There's what I hear as the words coming out of my mouth, going across Zoom land around the planet, coming out through your computer monitor speakers. And there's what you hear, how you perceive what those sounds that I'm making are. And they're not necessarily the same thing. Yeah, I'd have to trust you, Mike. I'd have to have trust that you are a esteemed, a person who is someone who can only use correct reasoning. But you told me you only have $3.50 in your pocket, so just kidding, just kidding. I know you allow me to tease you, right, Mike? Is that okay? Okay. I do love you, Mike. I'm sorry. I didn't mean anything negative. Okay, so here, as you see on my screen here, and what you will see in your reading is the debate that I would like you to practice before our next class. And it's very similar to the debate that Venerable Kadran brought up that I asked you to do before this class. So it's just practice. It's basically just reading through this logical argument, which is actually a continuation of the one you did last time. And just getting used to how you would, what you would say in response to somebody else. So you're just going through what they call the Rikpe Drok Tong. And we talked about that last time. It's the structure of a debate. So it's just planting seeds and just keep going through. And when you get the English for this, which you'll see in your reading, you've had all of these words individually except for this. Kareshak, which is a kind of funny word, kareshak. And it's very similar to shok. Remember when you say shok, show me. Give me that example. This means it's a little more specific than just shok, show. This is positive argument that proves that. Go ahead, just try and give me a logical statement that proves what you're saying. That's kareshak. But all the rest of these you've seen before. So again, it's just going through and becoming familiar with the structure of a logical statement. Okay, wow. I just butt right up against the deadline for the class. So thank you so much. Let's quickly do some prayers before we lose all of our positive energy. If I can find it. Oh no. Oh my, I closed it. Okay. Please excuse me while I access that information. Okay, close your eyes. I'm going fast. Okay, let's dedicate all of our positive energy from our class today. May we all have clear thinking and see emptiness directly. Gewa di gewo kun sunam yeshe tsok shin sunam yeshe le chung wei dampa kuni topa sho. Thank you so much. Have fun playing with this debate. Have fun doing the homework and the reading. Remember, you can just take a little break in the reading. But I don't want to keep you any longer. Okay. Bye.